speaking, with me Tarun Nangia. Today we are going to discuss the important issue of Andhra Chief Minister Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy writing a letter to none less than the Chief Justice of India, Sharad Arvind Bobde, and actually complaining against sitting Supreme Court judge, none other than who's in line to become our next Chief Justice of India, Justice Ramanna. He's made various wild allegations which are known in the press, reported in the press since his letter was leaked to the media by Jagan Mohan Reddy. It includes, in a sense, alluding to influencing benches in the state of Andhra, other wild allegations that have been made. Of course, the state government, in a sense, the state police has filed a case against the daughters of Justice Ramanna, which has also been reported in the press. And it looks like somewhere it is like also an attack on the institution, because should a sitting chief minister leak such a letter to the press, and also was what he conducted himself in the right spirit of law? But I'm not an expert on all of this, but the gentleman who's kindly consented to be my guest today is, I would like to welcome third term senior Rajya Sabha MP, former chairman of Parliamentary Standing Committee on Law, and eminent jurist, Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi on Legally Speaking. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you.
Sir, I mean, this issue is not alien to you. You have, in a sense, perused through the data, all that has been going on for the past week. Can you give me an opening comment on what do you think of the conduct of Jagan Mohan Reddy? Was it in the right spirit, or what is the initial 3-4 remarks or 3-4 things or observations that come to your mind when you saw this happening?
Well, Tarun, first of all, it's amusing to be described as an expert in such messy things. I certainly don't want to qualify. But since we are talking of this rather messy subject, let me summarize my opening observations by saying that I find a lot of things wrong with this. Firstly, the timing, and the approximate timing and the general timing of this allegation. And I'll explain why in a moment. Secondly, its manner and mode. And thirdly, its content. And each of those are raising a lot of questions about the alleged complainants. And I don't quite agree with a lot of things there. And I certainly am not privy to inside knowledge or information about this beyond the point to the extent that we are in the profession. But all these three things make it rather unsavory and messy and uncalled for and undesirable and unacceptable.
So, moving on to our first question, let us go on to the first very instance of what happened. A letter was written to the Chief Justice of India and leaked to the press. Do you find anything wrong in that very act committed by Jagan Mohan Reddy, the Chief Minister of Andhra?
See, that's my mode and manner point. That's exactly what I said in one of my 3 broad headings. Certainly not. The answer to your question is certainly not. Whosoever be the complainant, constitutional, functionary or otherwise, first of all, if you have sufficient, strong, genuine prima facie concerns, and if they are genuinely genuine, then you have a mechanism, you have a system of complaining which is confidential, quiet, which doesn't create sensationalism. It appears to me that the context in which this is, you first send a letter to me, then you hold a press conference, then you again go to the press, then you carry it all over town through your factotums. I think, to put it bluntly, it stinks. And it could have been done in a very dignified, quiet way if the concerns were genuine and bona fide. And I think that has not happened.
It is very disconcerting when a sitting chief minister accuses a sitting Supreme Court judge, both constitutional, in a sense, positions, of destabilizing his government. He is, in a sense, accusing the Supreme Court judge of destabilizing the state government. Even if that was the allegation, was the manner in which that allegation was raised? What 2-3 points come to your mind when you, in a sense, hear this kind of an allegation against a sitting Supreme Court judge?
Well, I think the very nature of the allegation belies it. The very nature of the allegation dilutes and nullifies it. I'll tell you why. First of all, and that's been talked about recently by different constitutional functionaries, it's weird that whenever you're at the cusp or at the anvil of some major promotion and position, and we all know that the subject matter of our discussions is scheduled to become Chief Justice of India next year,
Yes.
these kind of pot shots start. Now, here the complainant, most of the complaint and the issues are a minimum of 2 to 3 years old. After all, the person has been, as you call it, a constitutional functionary for more than 2 years. Without being a constitutional functionary, the issue of change of capital and all the other land-related issues have been in the public domain for more than a couple of years. So if there was nothing to the timing, I wonder why I'm putting words of the mildest moderation. Why should you raise it now just because you're on the cusp of something? Why should you raise it in a context which is intended to be obstructive and defeat something which the world sees as the rightful succession to a constitutional position to the next Chief Justice of India? So I think this timing also stinks, doesn't inspire confidence. Then thirdly, if you are able to say as a functionary that somebody is destabilizing the entire government of Andhra Pradesh, does it on the face of it not seem absurd? Look at the implications. It of course gives omnipotence and omnipower to a person, is a left-handed compliment to the accused, so to say. But apart from that, it means that the entire or a large chunk of the High Court of Andhra Pradesh is collusively involved with certain chunks of the apex court, which is bizarre enough. And that collusion has the reach and envelops a constitutional functioning of a government. I mean, if you really look into it in depth, this is bizarre. So the nature of the allegation is too vague, too general. And these, announcement of the capital, purchases of any and not have been in the domain for very long. Why raise them now at this time?
I agree with you. The timing is very suspicious. Allegations have been made that Ramana's daughters, Justice Ramana's daughters, purchased land in Amravati, which was then to become the capital. But there seems a manner in which the leaks have been made to the press, and that raises a suspicion. Do you think so, sir, in that case?
There was, in fact, hardly any concealed leak. After the initial leak, it was very much out in the public domain in a brazen way. There is first a letter. Before perhaps it reaches the addressee, there is a leak. Before the leak is over, a factotum of the government launches a press conference. Before the press conference is over, other factotums take over. So I think it is done crudely. And more than that, I think there is no doubt it is done to embarrass. It is done to create an atmosphere where some obstruction could be put on what everybody knows is an impending constitutional succession.
In fact, I was shocked to read the content of the letter because Reddy, Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy, wrote to the Chief Justice of India, Sharad Arvind Bobde, and I quote, Justice Ramana has been influencing the sittings of the High Court, including the roster of a few honorable judges, and instances of a few matters important to the Telugu Desam have been allotted to a few judges. Now, when I read this, this in the past few years has been a very common allegation that benches are being fixed. It earlier happened in the Supreme Court. Now this allegation is being leveled against a sitting Supreme Court judge, by the virtue of which you are indirectly accusing the Andhra Chief Justice also, and it all reeks of as if everything is just happening and can be managed. And
worse. It is hit by blanket, wild, overbroad nature of the width of the allegations. As I said, half in zest and half not in zest, it is a huge left-handed compliment to the omnipresence and the omnipotence of the person who's accused of doing all this. Look, as I said, it requires collusive behavior of large sections of judges, many of them. I don't at all accept it from the very nature. There is no singularity about it, and if in an individual case it is possible, it happens all the time. I file a case, it comes before you, I have a problem, I move a bias application to that judge. I say Justice Tarun Nangia is not for this, that, or the other reason, competent to hear it. I can understand that in an individual case. Not that I'll accept it, not that I agree with it, but I can understand that kind of allegation because it's done in a judicial process. But to suggest that 4 judges of the Supreme Court, along with the next Chief Justice, and 7 judges of the High Court, led by the Chief Justice of that High Court, are colluding to help a third political party, who incidentally happens to be out of power for some time, I think it belies, credibility. And I think it does irreversible, huge damage, which is not to be taken lightly. After all, we live in bad times. Faith in all systems, all institutions. Forget the Supreme Court, forget the army, forget the CAG, forget so many institutions. All of it is declined, some with justification. But this kind of a wide sweeping allegation by a sitting chief minister, who has won a very handsome victory, whose mandate is appreciable, I think destroys the faith. And as they say, dharma rakshati rakshato, if you do not respect the law will not protect you. Tomorrow, the legal system protects us all. Tomorrow, when you diminish it, you denigrate it, you dilute it, and it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, our very democracy gets imperiled. Now, the whole High Court is really painted black. Unnamed, indiscriminate allegations against unnamed persons, and everybody is under a scan of suspicion. So you have to, even if there is a fractional, infinitesimal germ of truth anywhere, which I have at the moment no reason to believe, you must do it in a different way. You take a formal thing, do it in a dignified way. The object will then be not sensationalism, not obstruction, not putting you in the dock for ulterior motives.
That's where I want to draw your attention to a fact. The judges can't reply in a sense. They don't come out in the public because they are not in the political arena. Is this an attempt to draw judiciary into the domain of politics?
You are absolutely right, Tarun, that you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Now I heard, and this is sad and sorry, some people, ill-informed, as I say, critics, and sadly ill-informed critics within the legal system also, as if why should the people who are accused of all this not reply, suggesting that. So if you do, you cheapen the system, you spoil the system, you denigrate, diminish the system. And I would never support that. If you don't, these ill-informed, half-educated critics make these innuendos that, look, why is he silent? Why is he not replying? So you're damned if you do, damned if you're not. And, it is certainly an attempt to draw into a completely unacceptable vortex and system. It should be resisted. And I don't think anybody should fall for it or fall for the trap or start responding in that manner. But the attempt is very brazen.
What are the constitutional provisions by which a sitting chief minister, in a sense, could have taken this to the rightful conclusion, knowing fully well that he himself is accused in corruption cases, which is known to all? Is there any which way a rightful remedy could, in a sense, have been applied to this issue? What could have been done in which we could all call a dignified manner of working or functioning by a sitting chief minister?
Look, first of all, let us disabuse ourselves of the impression that a constitutional functionary, e.g. the chief minister, has any special status, at least in theory, either as a complainant or as an accused. In theory, at the moment, I'm talking of theory. Second, if, for example, you or I, or for that matter, a sitting chief minister, has a genuine, and I'm not at all linking it to the present case, genuine complaint, he has, first of all, to put it in writing in sober, temperate, balanced terms with facts, not with adjectives. Third, he has to send that in that form to the Chief Justice of India, and he has to make every effort to make it remain confidential. Four, if he is a functionary of sobriety and balance, he shall then meet the Chief Justice and say, these are the reasons you consider the in-house inquiry procedure. There is an in-house inquiry procedure, as you know, and beyond that, giving it sufficient time, if there is action or inaction, then one can consider further things. But here, as I said, I attack you today in writing to a third person By tomorrow, I leak it. By day after, I have a press conference. By the fourth day, my factotums have a press conference. And there is a free-for-all jungle war. And it is happening in driblets every day, by the way. It is not stopped. Every 3-4 days, I find some limb of that government, some so-called advisor, some so-called functionary, taking another pot shot. Now, if the intention is, there is also a sixth or seventh angle which I have not mentioned, out of the many angles I have mentioned. The intention could also be to immunize yourself by making such allegations to create a wall of immunity in your favor. Now, just consider if you are one of the, let us say, the 7 senior judges of Andhra Pradesh High Court. I am giving only a hypothetical example. And a case regarding the ruling party comes to you. You may feel inhibited in deciding it rightly or this way or that way. Conversely, if you are one of the 7 senior judges who has nothing to do with only a judge, a case involving the Telugu Desam comes before you, you may again be equally inhibited deciding it according to law. So you are actually completely paralyzing the decent, the good and the unaffected independent judge also in that process. Because again, this person will look over his shoulder 10 times before reacting as to what to do with this context.
Dr. Singhvi, one thing I would like to ask you is this an attempt to browbeat the judiciary?
Well, I have no doubt that it is. I have no doubt that it is. At what level, in what way, are matters of details, but certainly let us take one level, the High Court level. It has, the last point I made is precisely that. It inhibits, I mean, after all, 30 judges odd in the High Court, I don't know how many there are now. It cannot be that all of them are afflicted with this imaginary disease, which is alleged in the letter. Take 5 of them, unconcerned, objective, unconnected. How will they decide cases for or against party 1, for or against party 2? Let us take both the parties, the one in power and the one in opposition. And whichever way they decide it, they are going to be ascribed ulterior motives. So this is creating either a wall of immunity around yourself or creating a complete paralysis. So I don't think you are wrong at all in saying browbeating, paralyzing, immunizing, and in fact affecting the very root spirit of independence of judiciary.
We have a legal system in which eminent lawyers go on to become judges in the Supreme Court. Some go from the High Court to the Supreme Court. And earlier they have professional commitments, which could be ranging from representing politicians, corporates, and so on and so forth. In Justice Ramanna case, he incidentally happened to be the advisor to the government run by Telugu Desam Party and also served as the additional advocate general. Using those facts, Jagan Mohan Reddy, the Chief Minister of Andhra, has attacked him when he was elevated as judge. Do you think, in a sense, this is not in healthy spirit A, because it is not uncommon for so many eminent lawyers who have represented politicians across the spectrum to be elevated to the judiciary? Tomorrow, anybody, anyone can just pick up that fact, which may be true for so many people who become judges, and browbeat the judiciary.
That's the point. Anybody who has any familiarity with the system knows. And this is actually very important for people to understand, because increasingly this is becoming distorted. We have spent a lifetime in law. We have, in the course of that lifetime, you and I have been colleagues. We have warred against each other. We have fought against each other. We have, you have assisted me in a case on the same side. You have appeared for opposing parties. And then one of us becomes judges is a very normal thing. Do you think I take out my enmity on you as a judge because you opposed me in 5 cases?
No.
And in a long career of 20, 25 years before you become a judge, you have represented all kinds of crooks and criminals. You have, after all, heard those stories. I have personally represented, I don't know any part of the political spectrum which I have not to be, I mean, it's not, don't at all think that I have not represented BJP MLAs and BJP MPs and other people also all across the board. That's part of our professional call. Now, to think that you carry that to the bench with you, that's why I'm saying a particularity and a blanket approach are 2 extremes. And as Aristotle said, each vice is always extreme, virtue always lies in the middle. Now, you can make a particularity. You make a bias application, you say a particular case, you say that he's his relative, you say that nemo judex, as lawyers call it in technical Latin. All those is acceptable. because then it's decided by a judge. You say, okay, it should be heard by this, not by this bench, any other bench. That's rare, but I can understand that. But this blanket kind of approach is silly. It's absolutely unimaginable. And I mean, unknown, unnamed people, mass of people, large numbers of people.
Now that this has happened, there are inputs from across the legal spectrum. Of course, the lot of lawyers and lawyers associations have stood with the honorable judge and said that this is an attack on the institution of judiciary. But now that this complaint has been raised, what is the closure that can happen? There have been, in a sense, talk about a committee of retired judges looking into it. Some say the CGI himself should look into it. In your opinion, what is the way forward to such an issue? How to take it to its logical conclusion?
Genuinely a difficult question, and I genuinely don't know the true answer. One is, I would have thought till recently, ignore it. That also is not a good solution, not a perfect solution. Second is, take contempt action. Again, you're damned if you do, damned if you're not. Contempt will set a chain and a vortex which false complainants might themselves desire. Third is, take some action which is purely internal, is purely quiet, dignified, a fact-finding inquiry kind of thing. But how we will do it in the current atmosphere, I'm at a loss to tell you. And what damage it can cause to something which one aspires to for the acme of one's career. After all, we are all ambitious. I mean, to suggest that you are completely non-ambitious or I am so eleemosynary, actuated by such eleemosynary motives, is to be really hypocritical. Everybody has ambitions. To suggest that at the acme of your career, when you want to take a call for having a peaceful life after you reach the top, then I think it's very, very sorry, I had a Zoom problem. It's very, very difficult not to obstruct and demolish and decimate that person's expectation at the last leg of his life. And how do you reverse that? How do you, compensate for that loss of reputation, for that tension and trauma? So I'm only giving you partial answers, a wish list, a menu list, none of which is perfect. And I don't know which of these will serve the purpose.
Dr. Singhvi, you have had the experience of, in a sense, watching, observing, being a part, in a sense, of that fraternity, watching the judiciary for decades now. You've seen it evolve as an institution. You've seen it fall down in a sense where allegations are made which shake the foundations. You have the 99 Constitution Amendment. You've been a part of all those times. What are the learnings from such a crisis for the institution? Allegations against Chief Justices or to be Chief Justices are not new in the past few years. Of varying degrees, these things have happened. What are the learnings that the institutions can take according to you?
It's a philosophical question, and I've been, in a sense, part of all three. Because a member of parliament, I've been part of the legislature. As a part of the legal system, I've been part of the judicial organ. And as a holder of a party post, national spokesperson, etc., I've been, in an indirect sense, a member of the executive. Now, I believe that the one biggest answer, of course, each answer will vary, everybody have different answers. My answer is balance, sobriety, the middle road. Number two, the minimization of the impact of the media. We've had these crises earlier. It's not that the 60s, 70s did not have it. But you had sober people, you had balanced people, you had balanced reactions. And you didn't have people like, I am looking over my shoulder, looking at what the media will sensationalize if I say it, and you are looking over your shoulder as to what the media might or should not say if you sensationalize it. That kind of approach also distorts the whole playing field. So I think the lessons are to have a very balanced, sober approach, to eschew sensationalism, to maintain sobriety, and then to counsel people wisely around you that don't be led into the salacious, nice, spicy gossip, small talk which we see in the corridors every day. After all, I also know that I've been around despite the COVID. The only difference is it's become virtual gossip now instead of corridor gossip, but it's gossip much the same. And we all tend to believe, this is the problem of today's era, we all tend to believe the worst. about our brethren, not tend to be revel and delight in so believing. So I think these tendencies must be stopped. The lessons are you must be robust and firm, and you must be able to collectively, even if I don't like you, I should collectively be able to say that to be unfair to Nangia will damage an institution. So I will counsel my people, don't be unfair to Nangia. Now that's easy, more easy said than done. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think we live in divisive times. And the biggest problem is, by the way, that politics, even in my third term now, I'll be 18 years by the time I end this term. During my time itself, it is so much more divisive, so much more suspicious. You cannot transcend barriers of politics, of region. The bar, for example, was one place from when I started, was completely solid as a bar. Today there is no bar, I'm very sorry to say. There is a BJP bar and a Congress bar and a third group bar and a fourth ideology bar. You can be those four things, but you should not be those four inside the Supreme Court bar, for example. Now, these are problems. They're not going to be solved by the wave of a magic wand. But these are some of the issues which we have to dwell upon, think about, and try to have that collective solidarity. The collective solidarity is just not there.
On this note, you've been free and frank as always, and I hope the council and the opinion that you shared will be watched by people in the system, and of course I think they will understand and act on it. You in a sense laid it bare without in a sense revealing as much, but you've said as much as you could. I would like to thank you so much, and I would request your time again for revisiting this issue 3 months down the line, so that we could assess what were the learnings and what have you observed of this event and how it panned out over the next 3 months. And I would want and request your attention and also your time then. But Dr. Singhvi, I would like to thank you so much for sharing your time today with us on Legally Speaking.
Well, thanks, Tarun, and thanks for choosing a hot topic, but done with balance and sobriety. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.